Welcome back to the Istio stream live from San Francisco. We've got balloons now. I'm joined here by IBM engineer and Istio core contributor Lin Sun. Lin, what do you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what you do with the Istio project?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a senior technical staff member with Istio, and I started working on Istio about a year ago. I've been leading our team at IBM for Istio. I've been primarily contribute to Istio in the area of incremental adoption of Istio, making Istio super easy to be consumed by our user, and being also leading our team on the networking and also multi-cluster environment contribution.
Great, great. And I think you brought a demo here to show today?
Yes,
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your demo?
Absolutely. You can never have a show without a demo. That's my theory.
There we go. Sweet.
Okay, there we go. So what we have is I have my kubectl connect to a Kubernetes cluster, which is really in our cloud. We had a new name now, IBM Cloud Kubernetes Service.
IKS.
Yes, IKS. There we go. So as you can see, I have some application deploy, which is probably very familiar with you, Bookinfo. I also have a bunch of other application deploy, so you can ignore that. Also, in the Istio system namespace, notice what's really interesting here is I only have pilot deployed, right? I don't have anything else. So I want to show you guys you can actually using Istio with minimum installation of Istio. So this is something we're really headed. We have minimum support in 1.0, and we're really headed down the road too. So as you can tell, I have my Bookinfo deployed, and 2/2 really means for each of the Bookinfo, I have the container itself for each of the microservices within Bookinfo. I also have the Envoy sidecar running side by side for each of my services. And so what we are going to do next is we're going to try to apply some of the networking functions just to see, if I just have Istio pilot on, can I still get network capabilities out of Istio? So what we are going to do next is we are going to apply this simple virtual service rule. So I'll show you guys what this rule looks like. Some of you are probably already familiar with this if you ever go through the Bookinfo demo. The point here is really to show, wait, you don't have to have the full-blown of Istio. You can actually using the network function within Istio just with pilot.
So, and one thing I'll say just for the stream, we're going to try to have a mixture of, introductory content, advanced content. We wanted to really start out with some stuff that was nice and meaty for those people that have already heard of Istio and stuff. So that's why we're doing this. Yes,
absolutely. So you can see for this virtual services, basically we are routing each of the microservices within Bookinfo all to its version 1 of the destination. With that, we're going to quickly create also the destination rule. So let's take a look at that destination rule. So it's basically declare all the destination rules for each of the services, and it actually configs to multiple versions. So we have a standard destination rule that can be applied with the virtual services. So now the other thing I also did, because I don't have Istio Ingress Gateway in my system installed yet, so I have wired up Bookinfo with an Nginx gateway that's provided by our IKS Kubernetes service.
So it's like the standard ingress ALD.
Yeah, it's the standard one provided by the community, and then we also have a version in our cloud. So you can see now, because I wire up with the ingress, I'm actually going to visit Bookinfo through my host, which is Lin Istio 7. You know how many Istio I play with. And start product page. So now because everything is going to be routed to version 1, so this is going to be a little bit boring because as a user, they visit book info, everything is routed to version 1, even though I actually have 3 versions of reviews being installed. So you can see my route through is working, right? So, but now I'm going to do some tests, right? Because I want to test different versions.
Right.
So we're going to replace our virtual service for the review. Let's try that with a simple condition on the headers. So let's take a look at this rule. So I want to say, hey, if I log in as Lin Sun, I'm going to test the version 2 of the review service. For instance, for everything else, I'm not going to impact my user in production. It still goes to the version 1 of the review service.
This is like, make your own launch darkly with Istio.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what's really nice and it still made it interesting is, Spencer, I don't have to modify my application code, right? So the capability of Istio through metadata and then through configuration, now I've already be able to test my second version of Istio.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And if I log out, it still always default me back to version 1. So I know exactly what I'm testing.
Yeah, you can get to that nice, like developers can kind of throw applications into production if they need to, or some staging environment. You don't need to get a ton of approvals, and then you can evaluate while it can still hit backend services that are running the standard. Yeah.
Yes.
It enables a new kind of development, which is pretty cool.
Yes, absolutely. And to do this with Kubernetes without Istio, you really have to modify your application to do this simple thing. So with that, I'm sure you're not going to be happy with just network feature. If you actually want to know, what's exactly going on with my microservices deployed in the mesh, right? Because I don't have any visibility or any observability of what's going on. So I like to do a little bit upgrade of our Istio. So notice here we are going to upgrade over Istio and watch out the configuration here. So instead of having tracing disabled as previously, we're going to enable tracing. So this should be able to allow us to have a distribute tracing function out of Istio. So boom, you can see it's a simple command. As the user wants to do more with Istio, from networking profile to distribute tracing, they can just run a simple command. By the way, we're looking at making the command easier instead of so many params in the future, but you get the idea. It's really, you can do things to turn on additional features within Istio with one single command. And now you can see we have Mixer, but only the telemetry portion of Mixer, not the policy portion, and also the tracing function. This is important because a lot of our users may not be happy with the policy checks that are holding up their calls. So the ability to install telemetry without policy is really, really cool.
For those of you who haven't seen this before, what Lin is essentially saying is that if you run just your standard Istio installation and you run this, a get pods in the Istio namespace, it's like your whole screen and then maybe another screen too of just all the daemons that have been installed by default. Now that's very useful, especially if you're just getting started, but being able to kind of pick and choose what you want and have them work independently of each other is also extremely valuable.
Yes, absolutely. So let's do a quick port forwarding so that we can actually see the distributed tracing, which is backed by Jaeger. So now let's go ahead and visit that. In the meanwhile, while this is painted, what we're going to do is just visit the guestbook. Then guess what? We install the tracing after we hit the application, so it's critical for us to make sure we have some data there. That's why it changes from 0 to 5. So let's hit 5 traces. So you can see we had one visit with Lin Sun user, which is why we had the review 2, version 2, and then the other visit doesn't hit the review version 2 because it's our default user. So the distribute tracing is really powerful. So you don't have to modify your application. You know exactly where the time is spent on each of the microservices, and you know exactly what are the hops in, and you can comparing it, different version, different single requests on different spans, what are the time spent.
And because that kind of distributed tracing analysis is performed kind of at the infrastructure layer, there's no question of different ways that different libraries across different languages are reporting it. Like you know that the units on this for each service are actually the same units, recorded the same way. You don't have this like, well, I don't know, the Java one's a little weird. We don't know how that works.
Right, exactly. It's all consistent regardless of your language, and you got a nice dependency view too. So that's really interesting too, without changing your application.
Great.
So great. The other thing we want to show is, one day you may be like, well, I really like Istio. I like the network function. I like the distributed tracing, but I want to try the Istio ingress gateway, right? Now we don't have the ingress gateway. So let's go ahead using the helm install command to upgrade our Istio. So notice here, we actually enable the ingress gateway now.
Right. And so this is, just to confirm, this is basically saying we're not going to use kind of your standard ingress inside Kubernetes system that's been around for a while. We're going to actually push all network traffic through a daemon running in the Istio namespace that's then going to handle that like front door activity onto that front door network connection into the Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah, so the Istio ingress gateway is something being rolled out since Istio 8, and it's being further stabilized in 1.0. It's addressing some of the issues with the Kubernetes ingress to be able to support more protocols, to be able to have more flexibility to configure the gateway. So that's
inside that container, is that an Envoy?
Yes.
So it's not an Nginx, it's an Envoy.
Yeah, it's totally Envoy. And notice there's no sidecar on that one, so it's just the Envoy. Yeah. So what we're going to do next now is we're actually going to deploy the book info gateway. So let's quickly deploy this guy here, and
whoop! First production mistake of the day. No worries.
And you can see the book info gateway is essentially say, on this HTTP 80 for this host star, we are going to, so that's the gateway definition. You typically put the host and the protocol and the name and the number in there, and then the virtual service still is the one that's configured the route on these different passes of your URI. It's going to route to the destination, which the previous destination rule is going to apply to product page 9080. So let's go ahead and try to visit our services for Istio ingress gateway. So as you can see, we have the gateway on 8998. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to see the product page here. So you can see everything, all the rules I applied before, it's still here, right? So when I click on as no user or different user, it's always the version 1. And if I do with Lin Sun as the user, it always hits me to version 2.
So this is very similar to the first demo, except now we've incrementally added, we didn't have to use a Kubernetes port forward. We were able to go over the public internet.
Well, we didn't use the Kubernetes ingress provided by Nginx. Yes,
okay.
And now we are wiring the application not only with the Kubernetes ingress, but also with the Istio ingress gateway, so we can have the transition period for the user to evaluate which one they like better. And one thing I really want to show, which I think is really cool here, is, let me make sure our port forwarding
We've also got a couple questions we can service too.
Yeah, I got a question. I got the port forwarding lost. One thing I really like about the new gateway is if you do another search on your product page, guess what? The ingress gateway is in there. So when you look at your distributed tracing, you actually have the statistic right from the edge of the gateway throughout your application. Yeah.
So let's talk about the edge. So Komer Pudari, sorry if I said your name wrong, asks, what is a gateway? In networking, it's a router with NAT, firewall. Is it the same here?
Yeah, so the Istio ingress gateway, it's an implementation of our new gateway spec. So we actually have our own spec in the API repository of Istio. So essentially, it's an Envoy as an implementation, and it implements the spec, allow you to be able to configure your port number, your host, and your protocol, and then you can apply virtual services along with the gateway.
And one of the basically, Comer, when you kind of get down into the Kubernetes, your Kubernetes is pretty hard. A lot of your traffic is what we might call east-west traffic, where you've got microservices talking to other microservices, and your actual requests coming into your website or whatever are that north-south traffic up to your users and down to your application. And this ingress gateway is kind of sitting at that boundary between, okay, so all north-south requests will probably go through that gateway, and then once they're inside, you have a bunch of east-west traffic that is your app talking to itself and hitting rating. In the Book Info app, it's the ratings page and all this stuff.
Yeah, so a good way to think about the gateway is on the mesh, the boundary of your mesh. As you enter your mesh, you would enter through either the ingress gateway or the Kubernetes ingress.
There's another question which we have, which is basically, okay, so we're showing that when we set a certain rule, which was around user headers, and my user is blah blah blah. Then I can hit that v2 of that app, and the question is basically like, okay, but is there a way to tell it to hit all v2s of the apps, or how do you cascade that out so that we've got multiple v2s that are kind of on that further down from just the users?
Oh yeah, so absolutely, yeah, you can definitely configure that through a simple
like a
configuration.
pass-through of headers or something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, sweet. Well, Lin, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to go to Twitch chat. Stay with us. A couple basics, housekeeping. We're a little bit behind schedule, but we think we're going to get back on it. We're going to come back in just a couple minutes with Sven from Google and Lisa. And stay with us. We're celebrating Istio 1.0.